Hello, everyone. It is so wonderful to see this room full of so many amazing faces. Thank you for being here. My name is Bonnie. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the poetry event coordinator here at Brookline Booksmith. Today, it is my absolute pleasure to host three incredible poets, Rachel DeWoskin, Robert Pinsky, and Kirun Kapur, for a really fantastic evening of poetry. We're in for a treat. Before I do introductions, I do have a few housekeeping notes. Firstly, copies of the poets' books will be available for sale at the back counter where you checked in. There is a chance we will sell out of books tonight because there are so many of you. Again, thank you for coming. If that's the case, if you get to the register and you find that the book you wanted is sold out, no worries, we can place an order. And our authors have generally offered to give signed book plates for those copies of the book that you order if we run out. So thank you for your patience there. I also encourage you to support these poets' works in whatever way you can, whether that means buying a book, following their work online, just saying nice things to them tonight at the signing. It's all important, impactful, and wonderful. Please also keep your phones off or on silent for the reading, and thank you for being respectful of our poets. This event is being live streamed at this iPad right here. Audience members shouldn't be visible on the live stream other than maybe the backs of a few heads. But if you don't want to be live on YouTube, just don't walk or stand directly in front of it and you'll be golden. And finally, last but not least, we will have a Q&A at the end of the event. So hold your questions until the end, but definitely have them ready to go. This is our last event here at Brookline Booksmith for 2023. We're really going out with a spectacular reading, so thank you for being here. If you're interested in the rest of our event series, more poetry events, 2024 events some are already listed on our website, so feel free to check it out there. And now, for the much more fun part, introductions. Robert Pinsky is a poet, essayist, translator, teacher, speaker, and former poet laureate of the United States. His most recent book is the autobiography Jersey Breaks, which was blurbed by none other than the boss himself, Bruce Springsteen. Robert's work has earned him many awards, including the Penn Vogler Award, the William Carlos Williams Prize, Italy's Premio Capri, and the Harold Washington Award from the city of Chicago, to name a few. Pinsky is a professor of English and creative writing in the graduate writing program at Boston University, where he was named a William Fairfield Warren Distinguished Professor. He's edited several anthologies and published essays, criticism, and many collections of poetry. Most recently, 2016's At the Foundling Hospital, 2012's Selected Poems, and 2007's Gulf Music. He's also, of course, known for his translations, including The Inferno of Dante. Robert has also released several poem jazz CDs, and his new album, Proverbs of Limbo, is available on Spotify and Apple Music. And we are also lucky enough to have the CD for sale tonight. Thank you for bringing them, Robert. We're really excited to offer 60% of the proceeds of sales of the CD to the Brookline Food Pantry. So we hope you'll consider purchasing a copy so that money can go toward a good cause. And of course, Kirun Kapur grew up in Hawaii and has lived and worked in North America and South Asia. She's the author of 3 books of poetry, Visiting Indira Gandhi's Palmist, which won the Arts and Letters Rumi Prize and the Anti-Venom Poetry Award, the chapbook, All the Rivers in Paradise, which came out from Chicago last year, and the full-length collection, Women in the Waiting Room, from Black Lawrence Press, which was a finalist for the National Poetry Series, the Julie Sook Award, and the Massachusetts Book Award. Kirun's work appears in Agni, Poetry International, Prairie Schooner, Plowshares, and many other journals. She's the recipient of many honors and awards, including fellowship from the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown, Vermont Studio Center, and the McDowell Colony. She's also a recipient of a Best of the Net Award, the Nazim Hikmet Prize, and in 2015, NBC News named her to their list of Asian American poets to watch. She's taught creative writing at Boston University and Brandeis, and currently serves as the Beloit Poetry Journal and teaches at Amherst College, where she's the director of the creative writing program. She lives north of Boston with her family. And of course, Rachel DeWoskin was born in Kyoto, Japan, and raised in Ann Arbor. She's the award-winning author of 5 novels, Repeat After Me, Big Girl Small, Blind, Someday We Will Fly, and Banshee. She is also the author of the memoir Foreign Babes in Beijing, which is about the years she spent living in Beijing and acting as the star of a Chinese soap opera, which, as I understand, was not unlike Sex and the City, but highlighted cultural clashes between Chinese culture and Western culture. Amazing fact. Rachel's also the recipient of several awards, including the National Jewish Book Award, an American Library Association's Alex Award, and an Academy of American Poets Award, among several others. She's, of course, also the author of 2 collections of poetry, 2 menus, which came out in 2020 with the University of Chicago Press, and of course, Absolute Animal, which we are celebrating tonight, also from U Chicago, and was released last week. So congratulations, Rachel. She's on the core creative writing faculty at the University of Chicago and affiliated faculty in the Centers for East Asian Studies and Jewish Studies. You can find her essays, poems, and articles in journals and magazines such as Plowshares, The New Yorker, Vanity Fair, and New Voices from the Academy of American Poets. We are in for such a treat of a night hearing work from the 3 of you. Everyone, please give Robert, Rachel, and Kirun a warm welcome.
It's such an honor to be here tonight, and it's also a particular nostalgic delight because after the 7 years I spent in Beijing, I moved to Boston because I had read Robert's work. And I decided, based on his work and his Inferno translation, that I wanted to be a poet. And so I came to Boston in 1999, and it was in Robert's classroom, 222 on Bay State Road, that I met Kirun. And Robert was an absolutely brilliant professor. I'm sure you will not be surprised to hear that he's a world-class mensch, in addition to being one of the greatest writers whose work I've had the pleasure of reading. And Kirun is my other favorite living poet. Her work is truly beautiful, and she and I have been writing and reading together for now 23 years. So being in our poetry hometown and reading with Robert and Kirun it's so giddy that I don't know how to describe it except to say thank you so much for having us. My daughter Dalen is in art school in New York City, and she came up with some images. I was recently at a poetry reading where the poems and some images were broadcast on the wall, and I really liked it because I liked being able to see them. So the first poem I'm going to read is called Attention. Nope. One back. There it is.
There it is.
One of the things that Robert taught us when we were poetry students was how to pay attention, how to listen, how to look at things and make meaning of them, and hopefully metrical meaning of them. Attention. The still, clear surface flickers, silver glint of fish across ripples. A rising breeze pushes a pattern, ribbon, moving print, on river water quick. Time. Sideways trees, line cliffs so steep, sometimes the vast trunks break at night. Fast popping, cracking, firework claps. Then quiet enough, intense enough to make us listen. Slow down. Foxes fuss, frogs lurk in the singing dark. Black bears and deer move in circles of their own. Societies of fishing, teeth on fruit trees. Swim above the rapids with them, listen. Blackberries ripen, river mussels cling. Try to hear time, each fish, leap, flip, glimmer, disappear. The second poem is about voles. It's called Ways to Love and Leave You. This book is about animal behavior and bad human behavior, and whether we can articulate a bright boundary between animal and human behavior. Spoiler, we cannot. Ways to love and leave you. Trick question, do prairie voles love? They appear to. Snuggle, breathe in sync, keep each other close for reasons not efficient, not useful. It isn't cold. Whatever the paw, arm, fur, and padding do, they will not make a baby vole. So why wrap up and nuzzle? Ask the meadow voles. Those fuck and flee or sleep, no staying the night. Good luck getting a next day text in the meadow, vole. The prairie's where it's at if you want rodent love. Scramble the letters of your own name. Or at least fend hawks and weasels off, lusting to gobble your body with another vole close by. Fear death? No need to make too many sad comparisons here. I am already at the airport. Sky, a momentary prairie I'll prance across, taunting predators, hunting a like-minded vole, no loss. There's a little suite in this book of vole poems. This third poem is called Anthrosphere. Who brought toxic mollusks, boat or sneaker? Human, vegetation, listen. Cannibal snail, gravel, carbon, gibbon, bedlam, listen to each sweet felicitation, to construction, our consumption, ravage, feast. Ask any of the billion chickens toppling over its breast how we make what's most delicious. Ask the numbered patterned cats, sleek past sense, sleek toward extinct, toward prowling cities, predators. 1 week, a lifetime for each chicken we invented. Ask an ocean rolled into a marble on the scientist's image, map of small blue trouble. All the water covering Earth's surface is thinner than the skin of an apple. Ask an apple, almond, lemon, olive, bouquet of kale. Ask anthro how it came to cover bio. Fast slap, matte, plastic, fat, fail. Auditorium. Calcutta's La Martiniere School for Boys. Curious children fret about extinction. One asks, furious, why grown-ups lie. Asks, why are kids the ones you're asking for solutions? After each sheepish answer, boys shy as deer approach the stage, formal in their navy blazers, bravely handing scientists flowers. They'll be strewn upon us, wilted soon. What used to be wild, we've coaxed into our own. Too hot, we chill. Too cold, heat up. Too far, we jet across. Unpassable, blast with dynamite so glittering our highway's ribbon. Silver tons of fish float up into our open mouths. What might moor us back to earth? So much sweet water brackish. Ask fracked oil. Ask detritus, whales, glaciers we are melting into. This is a poem about my dad's bionic heart. It's called Arrhythmia. My God, we learn hospital language fast. What's atrial, cardiac, filial, quick fibrillation, valve, root, arch, way past our pay grade here, sick, upside down until we spring you from this place that's saving you, thus saving us. Cut into what? Replace, repair, slow blood down, wait. Soak up what's true slowly. This truth may pitch us into space so terrifying we can't return. What else is there but you? Laughing, saying they froze then thaw your body, brought back slow each pulse 100 years we waited. How to close a sternum, stanza, suture, layer, wound. Measure something like love, abstract, fine-tuned. This is called Chemical Peel. It's about vanity and parenting, primal love. Today I had the skin burned off my face for fun, to reveal one beneath, a fresher girl, spring of last year instead of next. One more attempt to thwart the dead thing I'll be. My baby, 5, paints me, red face, many creases. Where you smile, she points, we laugh a while. Then she asks, can Mamu be my mama when you die? Mamu's my mom, so it seems unlikely this will work. I say nothing true, except that I will always be her mom. Take this fake view. Our nightly bubble baths will stay perpetual. I will shampoo her baby hair forever. Although I know some truth somewhere, someone once said something about it, time. It's hard from here to put my finger on the moving circus in my mind. What's clear? Girls fly, swing, dip, turn days to magic. Lemon candy, chapter books and princesses, Natiri, Avatar, ballet, bright broccoli in the trash. I cherished that first lie. My baby, 3. How did that get there anyway? And actually, who can say? What was my great-great-grandma's name? Will my babies remember one syllable of my baby's names? Dalen and light, unthinkable, the letting go. Sing such slow vanishing, hold on to each pink bubble. Taxidermy. Elk out our car window, you are all eyelashes, heels, neck tag a shimmery jewel, glamorous gaze impossible to catch. Your head and neck shift, watch, wait, blink. You stand between trees lovely enough to carry off and drape with ornaments at any moment. In the Grand Hotel lobby, what are they? Ferrets, muskrats, weasels of some sort, poke from a basket mounted on the wall. One duck's wings open onto 14 whiskered heads and 28 resin eyes, hard necks, snouts frozen above a Christmas tree like this one, but shot through with tinsel, scattering slivers of shrapnel, flickering fireplace stacked with fake gifts, its stones warm as whatever ran down the canyon walls. Here, traces of those hunts are covered by snow into which your hooves press star prints, each gesture crisp and sure, each breath still visible. I will see you for years of winters, again and again, each time my daughter lies down and waves her arms and legs, making an angel. I have 2 more poems. This one is called These Days I Keep Falling, based on a true story. These days I keep falling. I keep falling. Slipped on the rocks in a river and caught my left pinky, landing, tore bone away, avulsion. Thought it would heal, was wrong, did not. I am not distraught though. Change is falling. Change this year has taught me, kick harder and sleep. Remember, falling may prepare us to fall harder, faster, be broken. Okay, I won't despair. Blading uphill, I slipped and cracked a rib, right where the incline sharpened. Errant twig or seed pod there, lodged in my wheel, twisted, flipped me over, numb with shock. I'm not distraught. This fight is different from the one I used to have with my body. I've become myself descending, protective of what I opposed, some version I'm working to save, someone who is falling and climbing through time. And you? And then this last one is called Chance, Chicago. I took that photograph out of my window in Chicago during the pandemic on a particularly creepy horror movie day. Chance, Chicago. What bagels and bouquets of kale do in a bath, I'm learning. Dancing, half-dressed, mambo number 5. My kitchen is designated Tetris spaces, contamination station, soap station, rinse station, dry station, every jam jar sprayed, surface of each lettuce leaf clean, an outside chance, I know, but risks expansive. Is one sun hot enough to burn this off, away from us? Are we us? Are we tough or broken? Are we what we eat, wash, shrink from, hide inside ourselves, or safe? Strange groceries stack and gather, repeat, vanish, remake patterns, remake us. These new days take tiny shapes, then slip and fall away, become ways lives narrow into stop. Points of light on the lake. I'd rather lick you. Raise our arms in a stadium wave. Take the opposite of a distanced brisk. Touch everything. But now chaos, disorders, wonder. Letters, stanzas, rhyme. Somehow let this city sparkle, please. At 8 each night, people make a constellation. Shine flashlights out our windows. Some solidarity in those bright dots. Man-made stars. Say, hello, I see you. We'd never have met, but here we are. A show of company. South Loop, a momentary escape from lonely. Pilsen, Bronzeville, Hyde Park, flashing. Stand with me for a second, thinking, maybe we'll find something unlike shared terror. Past surviving all we clean, catch, bring. Chicago blinks in sync for a second. Light carries, let it land. Thank you.
Such a pleasure to be here. It's a little bit hard to explain the sweetness of this, to be with 2 poets who are very dear to me and who had so much to do with making me a poet. So it's a great joy. I'm going to read a few poems from Women in the Waiting Room. And I thought I'd just start at the beginning, both in the sense that this is the first poem in the book, and in the sense that this is a first story, a foundational story. This poem thinks about the great Hindu epic poem, the Ramayana, which is about, of course, its namesake, Lord Ram, but also about his wife, Sita, who in the course of the story is carried away across the ocean by a demon, Ravana. On looking at myself in the mirror, or rereading Valmiki's Ramayana, anyone can disappear across the black water. Every girl can be taught. Her middle name is shame. When will I burn the urge for purity? My bones are a furnace. My face is a game. Every girl steals away with a demon at some point. All her alphabets, ankle bells, all her braids. She will meet herself in the third person. She will lie with her fear. She will dress in her rage. The world is curdled with husbands, blue as the gods, gentle as flame. Hotline. I have been trained, so when she says, I watched my father smash my mother's forehead with a wooden broom handle, I show no sign of shock. The poet liked to say, you shouldn't borrow sorrow, write real things, dishpans, porch screens, broom handles, give me a humble trash bag. For years, this face I trained my mind to unsee, cheek eaten away by fish, girl body washed up in the canal, wrapped, the brand identified as glad. No scars, birthmarks, clothes, jewelry. 5'2", 133, precisely, my own height and weight. Police were saying, was she sure it was a broom handle, metal or wooden? We need the details right. How could a wooden handle do all that? The poet suggests, make it a skillet. I believe he killed her with a skillet, if you must. On the page, I describe lilies wilting in a vase, because I have been trained, because you have been trained. Can you believe? 6 glistening stamens, smashed rust velvet anthers. I grew up in Hawaii, which is a very beautiful place to grow up, but it's also other things, and this poem thinks a little bit about that. Girls, girls, girls. Along the strip in Waikiki, past sailor bars and clubs, the length of beach where lipstick sunsets smudged and magazines would shoot and caption paradise. Past posh hotels where M and I would wait for some nice man to buy us a drink from the bar. We'd watch the women walk like they were stars on stage, dress like they couldn't wait to be undressed, leaning over into idling cars. Out on the west side of the island, Jay tells me any man she dates is more likely to hit her than pay for her dinner. Teenagers holding babies spit at us when we stare. What you looking at? You got nothing. I have nothing, sobs Elle today on the phone. I know it isn't my fault, but when I think of how I let him do it, over and over, even helped him cover it up, I hate myself. I'm thinking of the man who owned the noodle shop, the man who'd always sit and chat with me about Hanoi, warm water in canals, moms on bikes with babies tied down front and back, how to tell a ripe papaya. I saw him on the news a few years back for smuggling women in refrigerated trucks. He owned the bar called Girls, 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 a few doors down from where he served me pho, the one whose sign was made of neon legs that kicked and kicked until they were a stain of light. We liked to swim along the South Shore when the tide was right. You had to time your dive or crack your head against the reef. More than once, a girl washed up. Sometimes they named her on the news. M and I drank kamikazes on the lanai of the new Sheraton. The chief of security coming out to check we were the right sort of girls, regaling us with stories of the wallets stolen off of businessmen, by ladies visiting their rooms. A theft they later blame on the hotel maid. I hate Elle's voice, mine. When I think of how many times have I said it? How many times have I said nothing at all? Or tried to explain why we aren't at home, the right sort of girl and the wrong, why we're all out under the orange streetlights. Red Lily's Guzzle. A chain of crushed nouns have upended my mind. It's okay, it's all right, pretended my mind. A quick cut, a small nick, a surgical touch. Oh, pamphidine, tramadol, so splendid, my mind. Ram drew back the string of King Janak's great bow. Sita shot through the lifetimes and tended my mind. Monkeys and blossoms, a long metal spine. In the void, Frida's paintings befriended my mind. 5 parrots dive bombing the pilkin tree. A sharp song, a green wingspan extended my mind. The boat swamped with water, he lost hold of her hand. Now she waits for the country that's abandoned its mind. Red lilies lie drowned in a blizzard of snow. Dear world, your bright terms have offended my mind. What I, which she, who's writing this self? A girl, years of girls, have escaped from my mind. Hotline. When she asks, are you a survivor too? I do not say. I have been trained not to answer that. On the page, I've learned confession is another mask. When she asks, what do you do when you can't sleep? I don't explain how I walk around my small town in the middle of the night to remind myself. I say we are safe. We count our breaths together. I hold on while she goes to get an ice cube, goes to the bathroom, cries, murmurs, maybe even sleeps. Are you still there? She asks. Are you there? The self calling the self back. The poem I was trying to make. I'm here. I'm here. We take turns saying. Detour for a recent poem. These last two are inspired a little bit by the place I live now, along the river, north of Boston. This is called To the Grackle. Indecent bird, lovely as an oil slick with wings, you called me to the summer garden. Tin cans of light are crashing through the pear tree. Trash, umble, globe bracked, come kiss my ass. That's how you sound. How you, rash bird, can lure me. Can I keep coming back to this garden if I'm called? There's a man I love, and a boy who will be a man, whose bones I still feel click and crash where I put my arms around him just this morning. The lash of your voice tells me I should call my loves while I can, to listen to the grackles croak and clack in a nest built with half a ramen cup. They tumble out into the yard. For a moment, 2 tall figures stand twitching like the stuck hands of a clock. Then, crude slash of sound, boy or man or you bird, sends them swooping and dashing through panicles, perennials, old blackberry canes. Let it always be this way, noise, summoning, mustering us together to search out the brash mother who curses and flashes her wings. This last poem came from an obsession I had when we first moved to the house we live in now, with the river, the Merrimack, which is a tidal river, and so it flows in both directions, and it's always doing something. And I found myself checking on it all day to see what it was up to, like we were living with another person. Let me be as the river. Nothing but motion, muck-mouthed, mud-hearted, brackish, all dirty at the lip. with rise and fall that exposes hull-gouging stones. No curiosity about source, no knowledge of destination, just willingness to bear anything right to the end. Silver as fish skin, 1 hour wrinkled, 2 hours smooth, duck-fouled, trash-choked, silent, then gossiping under a full red moon. Let me be dredged when the leggy girls go missing, used for a slow cruise, churned for speed, reeking of the unseen ocean, or veiled in the scent of pine trees. A fog in the head, then clear as the tip of a pen. Enough beauty to draw blood, enough anger to strip the banks, enough fullness to carry the pleasure boats high.
Hi, everybody. Tell me, yes or no, are these extremely talented young poets? And it's more than talent, it's the books. It's that the way they sound and the life and reality. It makes me, I'm quite moved and very proud to be here with Kirun Kapur and also with the star of Western Babes in Beijing. I have seen some episodes of that so far, and I can testify that it is really terrible. But it's a great poet who is an actor. And I'm so proud and happy to be here with these people and to be, having been their teacher a long time ago. I'll read poems from, the book is coming out in June. My next book will be called Proverbs of Limbo. The CD that we have here also is called Proverbs from Limbo. And I recently performed some of those same poems. That's from the studio. Some of you I know were at the performance at City Space. I'll read the first poem in the book. And like the next poem I'll read, just so you're prepared for the length, it's 2 or 3 typed pages. Poem of Names. The bad rain fell on Osama Shimomura. On the walk home, that rain turned his white shirt black. Quote, my grandmother got me quickly into a bath. It likely saved me from death by radiation. End quote. Tuvalu's Ernst Pinsky would not discuss his family killed by Nazis. Quote, an area I have liquidated for my mental health. End quote. Pinsky's grave at Tuvalu, a kind of shrine. Solomon begat Boaz, Boaz begat Obed. Underground river of names, of passion and retrenchment. Thank you, Elliot, Simon, and Hazel, for wanting to talk with me about my dying someday. The dog Bucky had been so cold when you touched his body. A compliment for me, that conversation. It almost doesn't matter what we said. I thought of Milford, your great-grandpa. That time I asked him, did he believe in life after death? I guess that you are my life after death, he said. A boy named Christian at a Q&A in Texas asks me, the visiting poet, what motivates you? What gets you out of bed each day? Good question. The pride of Ernst Pinsky, of Mississippi. The shame of Nathan Forrest, of Pillow Hill. Willie Lee Rose, historian of Reconstruction. Congressman Pellegrino Rodino, nicknamed Pete. It's the dead people that motivate me, Christian. Dorothy Pinsky Wright. William Butler Yeats. As to your name, I remember Don Polk saying, quote, "A lot of Jewish people think they're white, but no, they're not," end quote. In some ways, Yeats was a jerk. Our Faksad begat Salah. Salah begat Aber. "Oh yeah," said Ruby to Don. "Well, most black people don't know they're goyim." Somebody said about Rodino and Sirica, "The night school guys are saving the country." Pinsky needed a job, but no white school could offer him a position. Tugolo did. At his famous forums there, Pinsky asked his students to sit one chair apart so the white kids from Millsaps sat among them. Pete Seeger, Ralph Bunch, Joan Baez at the forums. Rodino in the House, impeaching Nixon. Pellegrino means pilgrim. Shimomura discovered cells that made a jellyfish glow. He garnered 1 million samples in Puget Sound. A protein in Iquaria victoria, embedded to glimmer in other life, transformed all the study of living things. Years later, the Exxon Valdez oil spill left nearly all those Iquaria dead, a poisoning that Shimomura indicted, he whose grandma had washed away the ashes. I'll read the second poem in Proverbs of Limbo, which is of a similar length. It's called Branca. Ralph Branca was the 15th of 17 children. This poem is not the poem of, quote, the speaker, end quote. His father was an immigrant from Calabria. These words are those of Robert Pinsky, speaking. Branca wore Dodger uniform number 13. Speaking is the punchline of a Jewish joke. Some Romans call Calabrians Africani. Brooklyn had its own daily, the Brooklyn Eagle. At 85, Branca learned about his mother. He was 21 when Robinson joined the Dodgers. At 11, I loved Robinson for his daring, running the bases, stealing home, his fire. Branca was one of the few who defended him. Branca was one of the few who befriended him. I was too young to understand his mission, the fuel of that dancing to taunt the pitcher. Robinson never forgot Branca's kindness. What the old man found out about his mother is she was born a Jew in Hungary, Kaki. After he gave up the most famous home run ever, back in the clubhouse, Branca lay weeping, face down. Kati gave birth to 17 Catholic children. The Giants won the pennant, 1951. Branca means claw, a fit name for a pitcher. His teammates thought it best that Branca cry alone. But, quote, only my dear friend Jackie, who knew me so well, came over and put his arm around my shoulder, end quote. The Nazis killed the aunts and uncles Branca didn't know existed until he was old. 42 in itself, a nothing of a number. The Dodgers traded Branca to the Tigers. I loved writing that line. The Dodgers traded Bronca to the tigers. Grief with its countless different ways and strains. Glory, a greater thing than success, but slower. Some of the tigers who had been giants explained to Bronca how the giants had stolen the signs from opposition catchers, the telescope in center field, wires, buzzers. Bronca chose not to talk about it. It's all in Prager's book. His research unearthed Cutty, those aunts and uncles. The Dodgers were taken from Brooklyn by their owner. I, Robert Pinsky, choose not to say his name. I didn't live in Brooklyn, but I knew the score. I knew it was a kind of underdog place. Nowadays, once a year, all major leaguers wear Jackie Robinson's number, 42. Big deal. In the joke, the person who answers the telephone at Goldberg, Goldberg, and Goldberg keeps replying that Goldberg is out of the office, and so is Goldberg. All right then, let me talk to Goldberg. Speaking. Robinson spoke to Bronca. Without you, he said, we never could have made it this far. I'll read one more poem to you, it's shorter than those. I'll read to you by the way, at the beginning, the speaker, an extremely eminent American historian, probably the most famous living historian, read that poem in the New Yorker and loved the poem, so it was just very, very good. He said, but what's that thing you're reading about the speaker? And it made me realize that in English classes, in creative writing classes, we have this habit where in Ben Jonson's poem, On the Death of His First Son, the speaker alludes to the speaker. And so that's in my little province, my little corral of English teaching. And that guy got the rest of my poem and thought that. I explained to him it's just baloney of my profession. I will close with a poem that I chose to put first in my selected poems. The poem is called Rhyme. And despite what some people think, it does rhyme, though not in the way of the time when you get rid of the slime and the grime. It rhymes a different way. And it's my poem, I guess, it's in the way my poem about poetry is my poem about the feelings that I get when I hear young poets whose work I admire writing things I couldn't write that are so wonderful and that are the real thing. You know, poetry is faster than other kinds of writing, and it's more physical and bodily than other kinds of writing. And that speed and bodily quality was shining through, and that cheers me up and makes me feel good. So I'll close with rhyme. Rhyme, air and instrument of the tongue. The tongue and instrument of the body. The body and instrument of the spirit of being of the air. Each bird the medium of its song. Each song a world, a containment, ready for us guests who inherit our compartment of time there. In the Joseph Cornell box among ephemera as its element, the preserved bird, a study in spontaneous elegy, the parrot, art, mortal in its cornered sphere. Each room a stanza, rung in a laddered filament, clambered by all us unsteady chambered voices that share it, each one reciting, I too was here. I too was here. In a room, a rhyme, a song, in the box, in books, each element an instrument, the body still straining to parrot the spirit, a being of the air.
That was incredible. Thank you for sharing such amazing poems and reading them so beautifully. We're going to commence our Q&A, so I'll invite the three of you on stage over here. We'll get these on. But if anyone has questions for these three incredible poets, feel free to raise your hand. I'll call on you. Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, Robert, this is a silly question. I was born in Brooklyn. I called him Ralph Branca. You called him Branca, but that's not the question. Since you wrote a poem about baseball, you also mentioned Don Hoke. Is he the third baseman?
Don Hoke was a third baseman.
Yeah, so
yes.
that was the Don Hoke of your poem?
I think, no, it was the guy, a friend of mine, a colleague of mine. We taught at a women's college, and I remember Don complaining he was one of the few black people in that town and at the college, so he felt he should get a separate salary for all the committees he had to be on. Don Polk did say it was, so Don Hoke, I'm very glad to have Don Hoke mentioned. And like differences in punctuation, Branca, Branca, Don Hoke, Don Polk, these things are not important. They really are not. The overall meaning is important. And whether it's Don Hoke or Don Polk, it's better if you think of both of them. And you gave me an opportunity to tell you about Don Polk, and the third baseman I remember from the Dodgers, in case you think I have no silliness in it at all, was Billy Cox.
Bobby Swallow.
You set a very high standard for silliness.
Thank you.
I have another question about baseball. I love that poem, but
I
this
warn you, Kirun Kapur is going to answer this question. Go ahead.
anyway, this past spring there was a baseball festival of poetry in Worcester at Polar Park.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are aware of that, but it went off very well.
They're both sports I have.
I have a question for Kirun Kapur. I'm so taken with your wisdom about the rage and the beauty of being a woman, and I wonder how you choose to avoid that rage eating you up.
Would you like me to take that question?
I think Robert should. Wow, that is a deep question, thank you. I don't know that it doesn't eat me up. I think it both eats me up and generates energy and imagination and creativity. So maybe I feel that whatever it eats, it generates if I let it, if I create a space in which that can happen. And for me, a poem is a place where that can happen, and where contradictory things like rage and beauty can be together without diminishing each other or explaining each other away. They can just coexist together. So I'm not sure if that answers your question exactly.
It's a good answer. Thank you.
Can I say something about Kirun too, in response to that? That in Kirun, rage is not always corrosive. It's also an engine for an unbelievable ferocity and a kind of eloquence, which I guess could rely on some other fuel, but she channels it into work that's totally staggering.
Thank you.
I forget if it was two or all three of you, but I believe at the beginning it was mentioned that you, either two or three, spend time at Boston University, either working or going there. And if so, can you speak about like
Oh, wow, on the spot. You could go under the table.
Kirun's thought bubble says, yeah. I was their teacher. And EU has an unusual tradition of poetry. One of my colleagues mentioned room 222, where I was the teacher when they were students. In that room, Robert Lowell taught a creative writing class at Boston University, in which the students included George Starbuck, Sylvia Plath, and Anne Sexton. And they would then go down Commonwealth Avenue to what was then the Ritz Hotel and have a drink together. And that's part of our. So I'm deflecting the question with an anecdote. If you want a serious answer, I guess you're not going to give it.
I mean, it was absolutely imagination shaping. And, you know, what we got there was not just a sense of community and a sense that poetry mattered and that it was kind of part of the larger constellation of being a civic-minded, reasonable citizen of the world, but also an absolutely kaleidoscopic view of the readings. You know, Robert taught us to read poetry, in addition to writing poetry, to making our own work better in the way of good workshops. But also to listen to one another and to listen to the news and the world and to look at geography and to build a giant constellation in our work. So it absolutely shaped me as a person.
I'll add another anecdote, which is that when we were all there together, I asked Robert what was the best thing that he got out of his own graduate program. And he said, he looked at me for a minute and he said, friends. And I thought he was, you know, being just charming and amusing and not entirely serious. But it turns out he was exactly right, because among the most important things I found at BU is sitting next to me. And it's something I tell my own students all the time, how important creative friendships are. It's hard work to be an artist in some ways and lonely in some ways, and to have those kinds of creative friendships, I think, is really essential.
Poetry is a great tradition of friendship. It's in both the Japanese and Chinese traditions. A lot of the poems come out of friendship and about friendship. True of the 16th and 17th century English poets as well. And you have friends in the art. Of course, it's an ancient, let's say, bodily form.
Hi. Question for all of you. COVID, that first horrible year, was that good for your poetry, or was it just, did you just lay in bed? How was it?
Rachel should take this one.
So I'm actually mostly a novelist, and when the plague first became acute and apparent, I was working on a novel that's set in a maximum security women's prison, and I was unable to work on it because I think partly in order to make fiction or to inhabit a fully rendered fictional world, I actually have to have a foothold in reality in our world, and I just didn't. I felt the uncertainty of daily life trumped my capacity to imagine my fictional world. And then there was a more literal problem of just having no idea what prisons would be or what it meant to have COVID in a prison. I felt like if I didn't address it, then the novel might as well be set in the 17th century. It was suddenly a historical novel. But if I addressed it, it was dated and utterly topical, and I knew nothing about COVID. So I felt like I couldn't work on that project. And I started writing sonnets during the pandemic because they're so tidy. You know, and they felt like the opposite of chaos. You have this beautiful little format, and then you can Tetris, you can put all the most terrifying shapes inside and make sense of them. And even the cadence of iambic pentameter, which felt like natural speech, I found comforting. So I actually only wrote poetry for the entire pandemic. And that one poem I read about Chicago is the only poem in which I address it directly, but that whole collection is about that. It's about fear and how we came a little bit too close to the bats or something. But the form of poetry was my bomb.
Yeah, my question is about teaching and the teaching of writing, which I think you all do. Could you talk a little bit about maybe some things that you keep in mind when you're reading student work so that you can encourage the writer's voice while using your expertise but not shaping the writer's voice or overpowering it? Or maybe those aren't even terms that are helpful to think about, but I'd love to
I have
talk
done
that.
I have done a certain amount of the favorite poem project, my big project, favoritepoem.org, and my favoritepoem.org. In the course of dealing for about 20 years with K through 12 teachers, I evolved two very important principles in learning that apply to writing: autonomy and corporality, which is the bodiliness. And the most important assignment I give, I think I gave it to both of these people, is to make an anthology of your examples of what you admire in writing. Ideally, you do it with your fingers. Cut and paste is better than nothing. And that anthology is a kind of autobiography. What do you value? And you print it out. It's a book. It is yours. And you have the burden as well as the pleasure of autonomy, being in charge of it. I don't tell you what to put in your anthology, but if you find it's mostly song lyrics, it's almost all hip-hop lyrics. Or in another generation would be all Bob Dylan or all Cole Porter. Have you ever read anything that was written to be heard spoken, not sung? But that's up to you. You decide. Have you gotten anything in there after the 20th century? You have anything there before the 20th? So you make it physically, and then you write it, and then they can share it in the relation of friendship. They can share it with one another. So I don't mean to jump on the answer, but I've thought about it a lot, and that assignment says, what do you have, and what do you intend to get? Are you satisfied with what you already have? And I believe that it has worked with middle school and primary school kids too. You have to give them the books. You have to say, I want you to find 3 things in these 10 books that you just like how it was written. They can do it. And it gives them the responsibility, the autonomy, and they can be proud if they make a cover for it. They have physically made the book. So physicality and autonomy would be my principles. This woman here is bursting with a question.
This will, I think, be our last question.
This better be good.
Can you say English? Sorry, English is my second language. No, I just want to say it's been really nice listening to all of you because I studied with Rachel at Chicago, and then seeing them studying under you, it's just like such a friendship, mentorship, everything's going on here. But I do try to write myself in both Chinese and English, and so when you guys are reading, I did notice that you talk about a little bit about, oh, this poem will be about, or I was inspired by. It seems to be a summary or a little concept of what the poem is. I was wondering, because when I write, I think about image or a thing first and start writing. Or sometimes you write a whole thing and you're like, oh, this is about time. So I was wondering about your writing process.
Is it different for you when you're writing in Chinese than when you're writing in English?
It's a little bit different.
How would you describe that?
Because in Chinese, I just write it and I can sound it in my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so different things. But yeah, I was just curious about your writing process. And on top of that, how to decide what to write and how to decide it's the right thing to write.
A quick answer, I recommend that you look at the poems of Ha Jin, okay, who also is bilingual and writes beautifully in both languages. I can testify to how wonderful the Chinese is. It's all sound. It's all what comes out here. It's all that. or if your American sign is also public, but it's physical. So it's exactly the same thing as I said to the answer to your question about teaching writing.
I mean, you have a lovely mind and many interesting ideas and questions. And, you know, as you know from living in my classroom, for me, wonder is the central engine of both fiction and poetry. I start with a question. I love that James Baldwin idea about the difference between preaching and writing. And that preaching is, you've already reached the conclusion and you stand up at the pulpit and you convey the conclusion to your congregants. And when you're writing, it's the opposite. You actually don't know what you're gonna find out and you don't even wanna know, but something compels you toward it. So I usually start with a question, and it's often a very chaotic or dark question. I think this is sometimes true for you as well, knowing your work also really, really well. And then I try to examine the question from multiple angles, and sometimes I try to write in Chinese, or I take, actually the centerfold of Absolute Animal is a little suite of Tang translations. And the reason is I wanted to dip down as far into time as I could in a non-linear way. I wanted that vertical dimension of time, and I thought I'm going to take these antique poems and I'm going to make the English versions of them as close to the Chinese as they can be, but also contemporary. And I know that that's the kind of work that you do in your novel, at least.
I'd say that things start in any number of places. Sometimes an image, sometimes a little phrase that keeps recurring to me. But I don't feel like it's becoming a poem until I can hear the music of it. In that sense that Robert talked about coming out of your mouth and going into your ear. There's something about some sort of physical sensation that begins to take place when the music is present. That is when I feel like I'm sort of in the presence of something that could be a poem. And I also find that the longer I can not know what it's about, the better the poem will be. If I know what it's about too soon, I've reduced it in some way and haven't allowed for as much complexity as there could be. So I try to hold off and be confused for as long as possible.
Kind of a lovely note to end on, sitting in the confusion. It's great. Something